event is it's important because it's about preserving, coming together, but it's about preserving the rich history of the amazing people of the Salinas Valley and throughout Monterey County. But more importantly, it's also a special opportunity because there's not too many places where it's also preserving and recognizing the history of workers, in particular farm workers, and the many sacrifices that took place in this very area that we call Old Town Salinas in this part of this community, but also many parts of throughout the Salinas Valley and in Watsonville and San Benito counties where a lot of the struggles for farm workers took place. We're really honored to have you here. Thank you, and we want to recognize the Laborers Union Hall for allowing us to use their space here, and also the Salinas. Thank you for them, and Salinas City Center Association because they provided the food. They were the host. The bakery. I provided the drinks for you tonight, and I think my staff are helping set up earlier today. Linda, Isabel, and Javier. But thank you everybody for being here because I'm a big fan of a lot of local history, and there's many different history from many different peoples that we want to recognize and celebrate not only a day or two but throughout the year. And those stories are still being written as we speak today with the ongoing struggles and the people who are doing amazing things in the community. That's the next chapters of history of this community. But we want to invite some people just to do some introductory remarks. One of the persons who really wanted to have this event, because when we talk about the old jail, it's a very special place that will be elaborated on, and we'll find out more, see some of the historic footage and photos, and it will give us a better sense of why this building is important. But one of the people wanted to help elevate the discussion and community celebration around this building, because sometimes when you try to preserve buildings, it's really the community that is going to make all the difference. The money is always an issue, but if the community puts the pressure on educating each other, and especially the elected officials, why these places are special, that is what's really going to make the difference. And so one of the people who asked to do this event first was my friend from the Salinas City Center Association, Kevin Day. So we want to have him come share some words for being a partner in today's event. Give him a round of applause, Kevin Day.
Thank you, Supervisor. And I know there are skeptics who say this building is not worth saving. It's got too many problems. Some of you have probably heard about mold conditions, and as you know, we aren't even allowed to go in there and take a tour of it. I've always appreciated, in particular, the facade of the building as something that's special and unique, and I think that people drive by that and say, that's a beautiful old facade. And the first round that went out for requests for qualifications came back with nothing at all. And everybody said, see, told you, nobody wants to do this, let's tear it down and put a partner and room and lot. And I talked to Supervisor Alejo and I said, I don't think we should give up on this yet. Let's do the extra push of the community meeting. I said, let's push some of the benefits that are available to developers here. Some of you have heard about these federal opportunity zones that are now in place to encourage development in areas that need revitalization. Well, downtown Salinas, within the area of the Salinas City Center Association, is a federal opportunity zone. There was also last year the Salinas City Council passed something called the Adaptive Reuse Ordinance, which gives developers great breaks for taking old historic buildings in the downtown area and turning them into residential or other uses as well. And then there's something called the Mills Act that was put in place by the City Council in 2016, which gives you a tax break from the city for historic buildings. You put all these various incentives together and then have the support of the community, the county, the city, Salinas City Center Association. And I'm hoping all this will come together, and this round we'll have somebody actually submit an application and do something with it. So I'm excited, but thank you for doing this, because I think having the publicity and the news and having people here is critical to making this work.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. Next, like I said, there's a great history, and my family is really tied to much of the history that happened here. When labor leader Cesar Chavez and the Lord's But first came to Salinas and Watsonville in 1970, my grandparents, Margarita and Tomas Alejo, one of the first of 5 families from Watsonville to join the movement. And ever since then, my family have been big supporters of the farm workers and their causes. But we're very honored to have the National Vice President of the United Farm Workers with us today, Lauro Barajas, who spearheads a big part of their membership, is right here in the Salinas Valley. We want him to come and say a few words on behalf of his members and the United Farm Workers. Give him a round of applause, everybody.
Hi. No, I mean, it's what we said, it's the community wants. Cesar Chavez, it's like, it's for the community. He made the changes. He was thinking not just on farm workers. He was thinking how to bring justice, equity. He was 14 years old when he was arrested in his first civil disobedience. Because at that time, we cannot be friends and each other with white. But so he was confronting that, and the jail represents the justice of that time. And what we want for the future is for people to remember how it was before. And that this man was kept unjustly, but he fought until the end, until the day he died, for justice. So the fight is right. And we have a lot of things to do. I really believe that if Cesar was alive, he don't want me to spend a lot of time in the jail, but he wants me to be organizing workers. But we're willing to support in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Before I pass on to our other partners for tonight's event, I do want to recognize some people that are here. Our colleague representing Supervisor Jane Parker, Wendy Ashley Smith, thank you for being here. We also have professors from CSUMB and Stanford that are here as well. We have Salinas Lulac represented here as well. Chago Juarez, artist extraordinaire from Salinas and a true local from the inside. Ana Barrera, teacher at Everett Alvarez. Thank you, our local teachers that are here and teaching the next generation about why it's important to preserve local history and be part of this a larger effort to make our country fulfill its greatest ideals about respecting all peoples in our country. But in this partnership, big partners of preserving some of the historic places here in Salinas have been because of the efforts of the Alliance of Monterey Area Preservationists. And so we have a presentation by them. But I want to say, this presentation, look at it, look at this building and being the only historic landmark for the Farmworker Rights Movement on the Central Coast. There's no other place in Watsonville, South County, San Benito, even South Santa Clara. There's 2 historic landmarks in San Jose, Cesar Chavez's home and the Sal Si Puedes barrio, and then Guadalupe Church, where they began organizing with Fred Ross. Those were state historic landmarks. And of course, in Delano, you have 40 acres. In La Paz, you have, it's a national park now, the headquarters of the United Farm Workers. But on the Central Coast, there's no other designated historic landmark than this building that we're going to talk about. So here to give us more information on this, we have Nancy Runyon, Mark Norris, and Jeff Decon. Yeah, thank you. Go for it.
Hi, thank you very much for coming tonight. I really appreciate this turnout. The Alliance of Monterey Area Preservationists was formed in 2004 to be a consortium to help all of the other heritage and historical groups around the area to advocate to preserve their historic buildings. And so we got involved in the old jail just about the time we were formed, and we invited several of the AHA members of the Architectural Heritage Association of Salinas that had begun the fight to preserve the jail back in 1999. And so we're very happy to be carrying on that torch for them at this time. They merged in with us, and we're happy to have their support. So the Old Monterey County Jail is on the National Register of Historic Places. And that is not an easy thing to do. I actually have a copy of the National Register nomination over on the table with the red tablecloths and some other materials that I put together from our work on the old jail. It's quite a thick book that was written back in 2003 and 4, and it was accepted by the National Park Service to be on the National Register for its importance. So, but it's not just a pretty building. It's actually, the reason it's on the National Register is the December 4th, 1970 incarceration of Cesar Chavez, unjustly, for 20 days in that jail for refusing to call off the lettuce boycott. Now that seems pretty ridiculous today, doesn't it? But the growers were so powerful at the time, they said, you know, if you don't call off this boycott, we're going to put you in jail, and they did. And so, but being in jail, Cesar Chavez was visited by internationally known clergy from all over the world. He was visited by the widow of Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King, the widow of Robert F. Kennedy, Kennedy, and it was on the news for several nights. You'll see those newsreels later. But it brought attention to the plight of the farm laborers, and this is considered to be a pivotal point in the farm worker movement. So, originally in 1999, the county wanted to demolish the building. It hadn't been used as a jail since 1977. Had a leak in the roof. They were using it for storage, and they wanted to demolish the jail and build a parking lot. They talked about a park, but originally it was a parking lot. That was really a waste of money. It would cost them $9 million or more just to demolish this big, beautiful building. And so that's quite a waste of assets. And so over the years, with the downturn in the economy, nothing happened. And luckily, Supervisor Alejo was elected. And we have quite a few new supervisors also on the board. And they saw the light. And under Supervisor Alejo's direction, in 2017, they voted not to demolish the jail right now, but to put it out for requests for proposals for adaptive reuse. So the Alliance of Monterey Area Preservationists thought that that should be celebrated, and we decided to buy them a National Register plaque. Plaques aren't given out every time you're on the National Register. You actually have to buy your own plaque. So we decided to buy a plaque for the jail, and we made an official presentation of this plaque to the county on December 4th, the anniversary of Cesar Chavez's incarceration, last December 2015. So, how many of you were able to come to that event? Looks like only about half of you. So I hope I won't be boring the other half of you. But it was this was our program from that event, developed by Luana Kami, who's actually here today. She's doing graphics for us, and we had a wonderful time. It was in collaboration with the supervisors. Regular meeting schedule, and then we adjourned to go outside to present the plaque and have a little lunch afterwards. So we drew a big crowd for that event, as you can see, and we were very pleased that so many people showed up, even though it was raining that day, actually, so we put a tent up for the press. We had a lot of press there, as you can see, and the main reason that a lot of people came was that we actually had we were honored to have Andres Chavez, the grandson of Cesar Chavez, come to our event and speak for preserving the jail. Here he is pictured alongside a picture of his grandfather coming out the door in 1970. Andres never got to even meet his grandfather. He died before he was born. But he did attract a big crowd, and we were so pleased that he joined us that day. So the Californian did a beautiful 2-page article on it. I actually have that over on the table if you want to look at it. And here's part of the second page of that article. And a lot of history covered in that article also. And even the Monterey Herald actually noticed that we had drawn a big crowd. So, and here's another picture of Andres Chavez with Supervisor Alejo at the beautiful entrance of the jail. And here's a picture of, on the left is Saul Nunez, who is a local architect who's been working on this since the beginning, along with Gloria De La Rosa of the Salinas City Council, Andres Chavez, peeking out from behind, Supervisor Alejo there. And on my other side is Simone Salinas, who's also a big advocate for the jail. In the lobby of the county building, outside the supervisor's chamber, we were very fortunate to have Juan Martinez and his beautiful display set up. So here's another picture of his display. After they had gone home, I wanted one more picture of it, because it really is an amazing display. And this display needs a home. It needs a home. The Smithsonian has asked Juan for his collection, but he says, no, it's going to stay here in Monterey County where it belongs. So here's our program. I only have 2 left because they all went out that day. But if anybody really needs one and didn't receive one, I'll try to put it on our website also, which is amap1.org. We do have a whole page on history there also on our website. And here's the back of our program. It has the history of the building and Cesar Chavez's incarceration. And I just love the picture. I don't know if you can see it on the right corner with the priest going like this. Oh my gosh! He's still shocked about what's happening.
And the one on the bottom is the lady in the white jacket, my Aunt Irma.
That's right.
We used to open and close the walls when you WR, and she's walking to the right of Cesar Chavez, and to his left is my grandmother's friend, Cynthia Cobos. Mama was a big activist in the community there. So that photo is when he's turning himself into jail after arrest warrant was issued for his arrest.
That's right. He actually emulated Gandhi and Martin Luther King. He was always peaceful. And even the jailer said when he was incarcerated in the jail that he was always polite and respectful and no trouble at all. So that was his philosophy, and in the long run, that works. So another reason that our event was successful is that the Mosine family of Mo's River Road Grill and Buena Vista Market on River Road served 140 hot lunches to anybody who showed up out front. And that was all donated by them. They're lovely people. We go out there, whenever we're going down River Road, we stop in at Mo's River Road Grill. And, but the main reason that we should preserve this jail is that in 2013, the National Park Service announced a proposed Cesar Chavez National Park. And the reason this hasn't been fully activated, or what would you call it, opened up, is of course political. But eventually it will be, and there are 5 sites that are already chosen to be part of the national park. As you can see, those are the gold arrows on this map, and then the black arrow is Salinas. Salinas is one of the 11 additional potentially eligible sites, and I think the only reason it wasn't chosen to be part of the original park is because the building was slated for demolition at the time. So here again are the list of the 5 sites that are already chosen. And Jeff Beckham is going to talk a little bit next about the building itself. Oh, and also I have some of our Art Deco brochures over on the counter also there. Please take one. They're about all the beautiful Art Deco buildings of Salinas. We did a tour several years ago, and this is on our website. I only have Spanish today, but if you need an English one, you can go to our website to see the brochure. Thank you.
Very good.
Nancy mentioned it was going to cost $9 million, and that was in quite a while ago.
Yeah.
To tear this down, it's because it's solid, poured-in-place, reinforced concrete. This is not going to be a simple thing to just knock down. So there's a reason to instead incorporate it into another project and keep the history that's already intact. You have right next door a wonderful example of what can happen when you take a dilapidated building and take the time and money to restore it. It is now a centerpiece of Salinas. That's the courthouse. And everybody that's been there knows what a wonderful example of historic preservation and restoration it is. I hope anyone that hasn't seen it, it's over there. There are a lot of examples of old jails that have been turned into other uses. And Nancy put together a group of them all around the country and around the world. They're big, beautiful buildings, and you can either tear them down and put some cheap replacement in instead, or you can try to take advantage of the history and ambiance that's been there for generations and reuse them. The top is a county prison from Pittsburgh. The one below is from Jackson, Michigan. These are from the 19th century. Salem, Massachusetts, from the early 19th century. It turned into residential units, this one. The ones before were various public uses. This is the Liberty Hotel in Boston. Liberty Hotel, rather an interesting name for the prison.
We have a restaurant called The Plate.
And former convict prison, an interesting combination, now council called France. And down in Belize, this is where they house their historic treasures now. And Melbourne, Australia, concert or a conference center in this space. And Gordon, Virginia, visual performing arts space. It depends on the size of the prison. Ours is not a really large prison here in St. Louis, but it's big enough to take on a number of uses. That would benefit the community. So here it is, and no one will, I don't think there are many people who think that's enough. There seem to be a groundswell of people who want to tear it down. The detail is incredible. Really beautiful ironwork and tile work and all the ornate window surrounds. Kind of a Spanish version of Gothic revival. The ironwork is spectacular. Mountain tile. And there are still cells where examples of the type of cell that sexual child is being incarcerated in. They're still there. It's just taken recently. Yourself, but there are many reasons to preserve rather than demolish historic buildings. The main reason for me is that they contribute to the history and culture of the area. And in this case, it honors the contributions of Cesar Chavez and Salinas Valley agricultural workers. And rehabilitation is so much more sustainable as opposed to tearing down at great cost and then rebuilding. So there's a lot of reasons, and we've already talked about the tax credits, and we're just hoping we can find people. There has been some interest already in taking on this project for those uses, so we're hoping that comes to pass. That's it.
You're on the lineup, Marty.
Like they said, it started in 1999, and I had been on the county's historic review board. Is there a mic? No? Okay. I'll have to raise it up a little bit. Take one. So I've been on the county's historic review board for 4 years, and then I had to leave and get back into private practice. I saw just the week that I was resigning that the county had issued itself a demolition permit for the jail. And being on the historic review board, I thought, well, why didn't that come before us? It's an old building. It should have at least come for review. I know that county had required the Sprinkle Sugar Company to get an APS air report, which is a very thorough investigation of the architecture, taking photographs, measurements, very detailed report, in order to get a demolition permit after the Old Monterey earthquake. And that building was falling down. The jail obviously is not falling down, the pieces are crumbling. I would say due to lack of good maintenance. But, the county had just issued itself a demolition permit, and I didn't think that was fair. I didn't think that they should not live by the same rules they required everybody else to. And it turns out that there's a public resources law that actually says that. I didn't know that at the time. But I talked with the HRB, and they said, okay, go ahead as a volunteer, do a little research into it. We figured the best way to make a step in the direction of saving it, or at least holding the county accountable, was to start an organization. So we formed AHA, the Architectural Heritage Association, and eventually put together an application and take it to the National State Registry, and we had an attorney file an injunction against the county to stop the demolition. And with the economy falling as it did, right after that, the county couldn't afford to demolish it anyway. That's often a big friend of historic preservation. And, so it was amazing to me in the process, just through the years, how much can be accomplished just by showing up. You know, you go to a meeting and stand up and say something, and the powers that be here that there's a few people out there, so we'll at least have to cross the T's and dot the I's. And so they go back to the drawing board, and they've had a lot of public hearings, and lately it's really come around. There have been a lot of workshops and sessions, and I kind of feel like the jail is finally going to get its due. We need to find somebody who can go in there and spend the money and find the vision for what it can be. I think a couple thousand square feet of a labor museum would be a good use for a part of it, and the rest of it, you know, the least possible best use would be storage. The county has tons of paper. They've got a good roof on it now. If they just keep the windows shut, keep the birds out, they could use it for that. It's right next to the courthouse. It's right next to the law offices, so it'd be a pretty reasonable thing. They lost a ton of, lots of tons of paperwork, and evidence was lost due to the pollution that had happened because of the water leaks and the birds getting in, and it was all foul. It was a hazmat site. And they had just lost all that stuff. And cases were put up again for appeal. Anyway, I started liking the building because of the architecture. And then somebody said, well, you know, Cesar Chavez was in there, and others. And now those records are gone. We don't know who was in there besides him at that time. We have the records up to, what is it, James, late 60s? Yeah. And then after that, somehow the records have gotten misplaced. So that'd be really great if somebody could find those in somebody's garage someplace. Anyway, that's all right. That's about it.
Well, as you can see, we got people who are representing business, labor, our preservationists, because this is all going to be a partnership for us to make it happen. But most importantly, it's the community. It's the people who live here, whose hearts and souls, families are here. I mean, it's really going to be the community working in partnership that's really going to make us be successful in the end to save this and restore this building. But we have some other friends here today. We're also going to get a presentation by Carl Holm. He's the director of our resource management agency for the county. They deal with all the facilities, all the properties, all the buildings. He's going to talk at the end. But we also have Phil. There's Phil Esparza. I can't see, I'm blind. All right, Phil Esparza, he is here. He's with the CSUMB Rock Theater, but a longtime board member, active in the Farmworker Rights Movement, but a board member of the Teatro Campesino, so we want him to come share some words too.
Yeah, I just came to be part of the Teatro, the Teatro Campesino. That's my real work. We felt that for 50 years. Obviously, we were part of the history of what some of you are alluding to. My experience at CSUMB has taught me the value of reuse in a qualitative way and giving back to the community of public facilities facilities, public land, and being from the arts, as you saw some of the previous examples, I think the most successful ones were always connected with the performing arts, whether they were concert halls, museums, and the like. And Salinas definitely is primed to have that kind of area downtown. We have the Steinbeck Center, we've got the Maya Theater, but a nice, turning that jail into something very positive that includes the arts, performing arts, the visual arts, museum, and other aspects would be wild. I would hope that with Professor Mendoza's help here, we should be approaching CSUMB to make this one of the projects in various departments and so forth to help take all that valuable resource of student energy, much the same way that we had in the old movement, to focus it in this and to really help create a masterpiece and a centerpiece for Salinas and the whole area. And so I'm here to gather information to take back to the board of the Teatro. We will try to be supportive. We always have been. I just noticed that when some of the brochures that you showed, I go, wow, I remember the Teatro being there. But to really help tell our stories, to keep our rich history, and to pass it on to our young people. And the reuse of these facilities, it doesn't, whatever you need, the arts can be that pivotal aspect of whatever plan is developed. Salvador is the one that really got me to come. And so anything we can do, we're there to help. And as long as I'm at CSUMB, I can do it from the login and then together with the faculty members. And, it's just, it's long overdue. It's needed. The downtown area needs that additional anchor. And, art, performing arts stuff is good business. That should never be considered, we forget that. We're located in San Juan, which they wanted to turn us into a historical place. It will be, but, in time. But, Salinas, we do stuff here, we always will. And so, anything we can do, adelante, and, we're around and we support it and really use us as an artistic resource. Because we're still making waves and we can help with the publicity and promotional aspect. Okay, so thank you.
In San Bautista, I would encourage you to go see their place, because you will see community theater that you will not see anywhere else in the country. It's unique to Teatro, to the community. You have artists who come from all over the place to come and be part of the theater that takes place there. But I want to really encourage you, because once you go there, you'll see what a special place that it is.
There's a play going on this weekend, written and directed by Luisa's son, Joaquin Valdez, The Men of Rad and Nine. So, yeah, check it out. Hot stuff.
The latest one, yeah. So, everybody, we're real lucky to show you these next news clips. And Joel Patzer, who is also part of the Salinas City Center Association, who's takes big interest in preserving local history too, he somehow acquired these, I don't know how, but he found them. And when I first saw them, I loved them, because some of the footage and images you will not see anywhere else. Even though you might pass by this building, it's great to go back in time and see what actually happened there. And you'll see the historic stuff, you also see sometimes the not so good part, where people were angry and not so welcoming to some of these historical figures. But it's part of the history. The good, bad, and the ugly sometimes, hey, it's what history is what it was. But I do want to say, when we talk about these images and this building, in some way we have to see ourselves as stewards of preserving history for our future generations. And even though they talked about a park or some memorial, it's not the same when our kids one day and their children and our grandchildren will not be able to see this building with their own eyes. They might be able to see this footage, and now I've uploaded this on YouTube, but they will not be able to see the building where these very things took place. So we got very short 1 minute to 2 minute clips, but you will see these are from CBS and NBC National News. One of these clips, you'll even see the anchor is the famous and legendary Walter Cronkite. But the first is going to be Ethel Kennedy, visit to Salinas. This was only like about 4 days. He was jailed on December 4th, 1970. So I think she came December 6th or 8th. Then there's a clip when Coretta Scott King came about 2 weeks after that. And then the last clip is going to be when Cesar Chavez was released from jail on Christmas Eve 1970.
Cesar Chavez, the California farm workers leader, is in the Salinas jail because he refused to call off the boycott of the local lettuce grower. Last night, Chavez had a visitor, Mrs. Ethel Kennedy, the widow of Senator Robert Kennedy, who came to the jail to see Chavez. The followers of Cesar Chavez have gathered each night across from the jail where a shrine has been built on a pickup truck. They pray for their leader's release. Last night, Ethel Kennedy joined the vigil because her husband Robert had been an early and strong supporter of the Farm Workers Union. They cheered when she arrived, but across the street, 200 anti-Chavez pickets booed and jeered. Most of these people were the children of growers and rival Teamsters Union members. After Mrs. Kennedy had gone into the jail to talk briefly with Chavez, there was some minor scuffling around the corner. Young demonstrators from both factions argued over a flag carried by a supporter of the farm workers. No one was hurt, but tension remained high. Mrs. Kennedy went out a back door and left town. The farm workers marched off, confident the jailing of Chavez has won them new support in their nationwide boycott of lettuce. Don Oliver, NBC News, reporting. In California, the leader of the farm workers, Cesar Chavez, has been in jail for more than 2 weeks because of a boycott on lettuce. Since Chavez was jailed 16 days ago, farm workers who believe in him have kept a 24-hour-a-day vigil outside the jail. 2 weeks ago, Ethel Kennedy came to join them. This weekend, it was another widow, Coretta King, who was the wife of Martin Luther King. She and Chavez talked about nonviolence and the influence that her husband had on the farm workers and their cause. She came out of the jail to make some caustic comments about President Nixon and his concern for the poor.
Our economy is approaching the $1 trillion mark, and with the $1 trillion economy, which the president seems to be very proud of, there is still poverty and hunger and racism in this country, and that we know one has a right to feel proud of this achievement until we have wiped out the poverty and the hunger and even the racism that exists in this country.
Mrs. King said all protest groups should unite in a common cause to remedy injustice in this country. Chavez still has no plans to end his lettuce boycott, so he'll remain in jail, waiting court action on an appeal. Don Oliver, NBC News in Salinas, California.
The House farm unionizer Cesar Chavez has emerged from jail to compare conditions on the inside with those his men face on the outside. Richard Trump reports from Salinas, California.
Chavez farm workers, hundreds of them, began gathering across the street from the Monterey County Jail as soon as word got around that Cesar was going to be released. They've been keeping vigil here ever since December 4th, when Chavez was arrested for refusing to stop boycotting one of Salinas' big lettuce growers. Now, the state Supreme Court has set him free on appeal.
Chavez looked tired and weak, but still had his sense of humor.
This jail reminds me of some of the labor camps. The plumbing doesn't work. The leaks when it works. It's very cold. It leaks when it rains. It's very damp. Lighting is very bad. I would suggest to the citizens of Monterey County to build a new jail. This is disgraceful.
Chavez vowed to keep his lettuce boycott going until Salinas growers are willing to sit down and talk.
In the long run, no one wins. No one wins really in this long struggle. And we're not contrary to public opinion. We're not crazy about boycotting and striking. We much rather negotiate. And so we're inviting the Aurora community, in the spirit of peace and the spirit of this holiday, to sit with us and to begin negotiations and to do it right away.
Cesar Chavez still has to convince the California Supreme Court to keep him out of jail. But now was a time for reunion and a holy mass of Thanksgiving, and then to Delano to spend the holidays with his wife and children. Richard Trelkel, CBS News, Salinas.
Yeah. All right, everybody, that was good. So our last speaker, then we'll open up for some community comments. We have Carl Holm, our director of RMA, and he has a PowerPoint presentation. This is to explain the RFP process, how it works, and where they're at in terms of that process. So thank you. Let's give him a round of applause. Carl Holm.
I'd like to introduce Dave Bragg. He's one of our project managers, and he's been intimately involved with this as well. So just as you've seen some of the pictures of the facade, this is where it sits within the county's campus. That entire block is county land. The old jail sits in front of the new government center, and just to the west of what we call the East West Wing now was the old courthouse. So just kind of where we've been in this process, as was mentioned back in 2002, that was kind of the start of, there was what was called a mitigated negative declaration, and that was to demolish the old jail. And then in 2004, with the movement that was taken forth, it was listed as a historical structure, which then effectively with the courts and that action prevented the county from demolishing the building at that point. At that point, once it becomes a historical structure, it requires an environmental impact report, and the county has not pursued that to this date. However, in 2014, my department was given direction to look at feasibility of the old jail. We looked at initially 6 alternatives, ranging from full restoration to partial parts of the building, keeping the facade. We added 3 additional alternatives out of the outreach that we did. There were some other ideas as far as some alternatives that we added to that feasibility study. It also gave some magnitude of cost of what would go along with that. So when we commissioned that study, we also wanted to get an idea as far as the magnitude of cost of what it would take to do that. And then just in February, as was mentioned, we did issue an RFP. This was at Supervisor Alejo's request to see if there was anybody in the private sector that might be willing to come forward with an idea and the financing behind it, because one of the big challenges is the funding part of it. There's been a lot of ideas as far as how to reuse it. The challenge has been, how does that get funded? So this was a way to see if there was some private interest out there. And as Kevin mentioned, there are some different types of funding sources that they can use to put that together, try to put together a package. The way that was written is pretty open-ended. Again, use the whole building, part of the building, use the facade. Just we wanted to see what interest was out there. In that RFP, there was deadlines for if there were questions. We never received any questions. We didn't receive any proposals. So we went back to the board, we reported that, and then we were asked to put it back out for another review period. So we did that. Currently, the submittal deadline for that is July 9th. We did have, again, a kind of a time frame if there are any questions. So potential bidders have an opportunity to ask questions about the proposal. There's a lot of information in it. I think also from the first one, some of the comments we heard when we went to the board was there were some things that could have been expressed better, put it out there for broader consumption, some information that maybe wasn't as accessible in the way it was put online. So we tried to improve that with the second round and make sure that the word got out. I think we asked for Nancy and their group to help get that word out. But at this point, we have not heard any response or interest. And Dave, you want to think more on that?
I think there may have been one entity.
Sorry, can you speak louder?
I was told there is an entity that may have some interest. I just don't, I'm not sure the name.
So that's promising compared to the first round. There's one more, yeah. That's all we need, right? So with the scope, this it was, again, as I mentioned, a very broad scope. We wanted to really leave it up to some creative ideas. We didn't want to try to corral it by limiting what they could do from a scope as far as the proposal. But there are two pieces. There's one, what is the concept, and then two, also coming forward with how are they going to make that work financially. This is the floor plan. And again, you saw the exterior building, so this is what the floor plan, the interior floor plan looks like. There's been some different ideas as far as what can be done on the interior for accessibility from a handicap perspective. Again, the main thing from an environmental perspective, when dealing with a historic structure, is if there is any of the historic significance that is lost, then it requires an environmental impact report. And with this building, there's two pieces to that. There's the actual period of the building, and there's the fact that the significance of Cesar Chavez being incarcerated there. So those are the two main tests. But for the architectural part of it is what would be the test of whether or not an environmental impact report is required. If somebody just reused the building as it is, not a problem. They can do that. They do have to meet the Federal Department of Interior standards for anything that they want to do with the actual building structure. As long as they do that, then they don't need any permit. So there is an incentive to go that route rather than the IRS. Maybe you want to
Sure. This is the same building, multiple floors. What it does is it shows some of the interior portions of the building that are believed to be associated directly with Cesar Chavez's incarceration. So these are locations where he likely would have been held, where he would have received visitation. So in addition to just the exteriors of the building, the original building, these are some of the interiors where we would associate Cesar Chavez and his incarceration.
So the upper part is the administrative part, the intake, and then the middle part is actually the cell.
And these,
you know what shape the cell exactly is? Remember offhand, I don't have somebody else here might. So that's where we're at. As I mentioned, we're hoping to get some proposals. July 9th is the date that we're looking as far as the closing date for proposals to be submitted.
Want to open up for questions? Questions?
Why is the submission time for the deadline so short? It seems like if you really want something to happen, you need a little bit of patience to make it happen. It just seems like a very truncated period of time, window of opportunity.
It's actually not. It's actually much longer than our typical request for proposals. It's more than double the time that we typically do. And, long or short, that's a matter of opinion, but that's why Supervisor Alejo asked about for an additional 60 days. So that's what we did. We went out for an additional 60 days.
Other question, Nancy?
This is a very large building. I mean, it's over 40,000 square feet.
Hey.
That'll be up to the board. And I think, you know, it would help if there was some interest expressed to determine whether or not they want more time to put some, you know, at least an initial interest that I want to put a proposal together, and I'd like, you know, however much time to put that together. I think that would go a long way.
Okay.
Has there been any thought from the county as to, at least for the time being, perhaps use it for storage, some of the back areas that are critical now that there is have to be cleaned up all this?
That's one of the options. One of the options is for the county to retain it and fix it up and do whatever, storage or whatever that might be.
Is the RFP put out passively, or are you advertising nationally? How is this thing promoted for builders, developers?
Standard for advertising is to advertise locally. And in the case of this type of project, we are relying heavily on some word of mouth. The preservationist groups that we have come to know are interested in this project, and other interested parties. And again, word of mouth. We would hope that an entity might come forward or be formed and come forward to show some interest.
In addition, in working with city staff, I'm understanding the city has a proposal or a request for proposal out to do a kind of a broader scale project, which the old jail site is included in that. So if there is somebody that maybe fiscally this site by itself doesn't fit in a bigger plan, bigger scheme, it could. So there's that option. So we've done that, and with their outreach as well, we're trying to get out to the press as much information as we can.
Other questions? Yes, one.
Yes, as a private individual in the community, what authority would we have, as you suggested, that we can go out on the word of mouth, go beyond our little community, because there's very few jails or older buildings nationally that have been brought through this type of process. They're around, as you all know. So then, like myself, how would I go to folks who have done these types of projects and solicit their support and or their resources to how did they do it, who were their contractors, and get that contractor over here. Now, we've been asking for some type of memo of understanding so that we feel that we were empowered somehow to go and legitimately ask some $1 million company to listen to us. Otherwise, I'm just Juan Martinez from Salinas Valley, right? So we've been trying to get this done, as you all know, for a while now, but that's kind of been, there's a Kennedy Foundation, there's a Huerta Foundation, there's this and that. I mean, they're all over the place. The resources are there. This is the type of thing that we can get national, if not international support, if we had some kind of way to go do that. You guys are limited to your jobs and your parameter on your job. If you're directed by your bosses to open that parameter, maybe that'll help. That's one. Second, if you empower us as a community to go out and do that, as historical preservationists, can you grant us a memo? Give us your support with your guys' Joe Doe's at the bottom, and we could go out and visit with these people and make a personal pitch to the board of directors of the Chavez Foundation, the Kennedy Foundation, Martin Luther King, et cetera, et cetera. They've all been here. They all have interest, and it's in the future of our future generations to do this. So let's work on making that happen. Thank you.
Carl, maybe you could just say what documents are available to the public, the links on the RFP, where they can find those in case if you wanted to send them to anybody.
Sure. On this slide, this is our solicitation center. This site, all of our county RFPs and invitations to bid are on this site. And anyone from the public, anyone here today, any interested parties can go to that link and see all the documents for the RFP that's being offered right now.
And there's a lot of documents that are included in that, including the feasibility studies, the architectural reports.
We've got numerous, we've got about as large a photo gallery as we could put onto the site without crashing it. There's a lot of the past studies are on that, are part of the RFP. They're all exhibits, part of the RFPs.
So just folks in this room interested, they should just go to the link and take a look at it because of all that information that's included.
Correct.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Anna?
Just to give some feedback, I've seen 2 locations where a design of an RFP was used, and one was like it became a beautiful Golden Gate Theater that had beautiful architecture, but it became like a CVS. And it was, I mean, to me, it's like a landmark that was very special to me. You know, now it's just a CVS. Another design that was created, and the building wasn't so much historical, but it was bringing in corporate, and it was Nike, and creating a community version of Nike, and it was East LA Nike, and it helped offer programs to the community, but specifically Nike, a corporate was targeted, and then they showed East LA to that corporation, and they told them what they wanted to see for the community. Like, I'm thinking, you know, start looking at what corporate level that could fund something this big, and you showcase Salinas, you showcase the farm workers, you showcase what community involvement, whether it's museum-based, but they have a specific space for their entity as a corporate, because they're going to want to be able to, you know, make their name known. But it's a way for them to either be like a nonprofit giving back to the community through museum and artwork, but putting their name out there. And I've seen cities go out and specifically target corporate to be able to bring them into their communities to give back, even though they're still, you know, Nike, but it's, you know, East LA Nike, and it's really sponsoring community programs, or you know, think of something corporate. You got Silicon Valley over here, bringing them into the Salinas Valley. You know, how can we bring them in and showcase our region, as well as preserve a landmark like this, since it's been opened up to the private sector? Because I see this as, you know, the county looking at the private sector, but at the same time preserving the space for the legacy of Cesar Chavez.
Thank you. Other comments, suggestions? These are all good. Yes, Laura?
Yes. Well, as the pictures appear, Andres Chavez came to the event last year, and maybe to have someone like him be involved and be like the voice of one of the Chavez can be helpful. And like for some key events, I can be willing to invite him. He was really happy to be here. And I mean, this is a community effort, but I think to have a voice like him, because what Chavez was like the son who moved the movement, like the most of one of the families, and he is one of the sons of Paul. So I was thinking that maybe that can help. So let me know, and how we can engage him and maybe others of the family.
Yeah.
So
Good suggestion. Thank you. Yeah, because it was good to have him and just could have that connection with the family.
No, he was really happy to be here.
Yeah.
So he might find this like one of the first issues that he moved by his own. So that might be something good for him.
Great. Other comments, questions for our county staff? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was curious about the feasibility studies that you took part in, and what sort of uses you might have, because I'm looking at this project, 40,000 square feet. Admittedly, it's incredible architecture, and that's the best thing about it. I stood across Alisal Street and looked at that front, and the facade is just wonderful.
But I have a real problem with what you do with the 40,000 feet behind it. So I'm curious if you thought, well, this is going to be offices behind it, and we're going to have some sort of a commercial use maybe for the front. Maybe you could put a restaurant operation in there that could take advantage of the Board of Supervisors and the planning department and the courts and everybody who's in there daily. Because the bottom line is you got to make money on a project. You can't, I mean, the emotional stuff with Cesar Chavez and all that, that's great. But that isn't going to put the money on the table to get this project done. You've got to make some kind of economic sense of how you're going to do this project. And so I'm curious, you did some feasibility studies. What are they all about?
Feasibility studies were primarily for reuse as a county facility, office type of use.
And was that good, or was that feasible, or?
Well, there's no real fiscal return on it, but the price tag was pretty high because of the accessibility. This jail, the way it's designed, doesn't have the lighting and ventilation that some other jails might have. So there was a lot of work that would need to be done, and so that's what it was looking at. What would it take for the floor plan to work with offices, to reconfigure into offices instead of cells, and for the accessibility as far as to the second and third floor, were I think the key pieces. Is that right, Dave? Or?
Correct. I think that would be critical. I mean, if the county was willing to lease back X percentage of this project as part of their input into it, then you might be able to make a case for you do some commercial activity on the front, and you take advantage of all the Cesar Chavez and the fact that it's an old jail, and I could see some really cool ideas coming out of this. But I just kind of wonder, it's a huge project, and trying to figure out how you make the whole thing work as opposed to just the facade.
Well, I think Supervisor Alejo can speak to it, but I think that's why he asked as far as looking at if there was some private interest that could make it, fiscally work versus just the county investment for a county building, which the way it was looking wasn't making. I mean, there's a large fiscal price tag that went along with that. And where we were in a position where we had the funding to do the east-west wing that had been put aside a while back, that was the last of that funding source. So, it would be up to the board to commit if they wanted to make it a county type of office or use storage type of building.
Right, so after this RFP closes, or if it gets extended, hopefully we do get some interest, because that would help keep the interest on the Board of Supervisors, right? Because for everything, we got to get at least two other votes. We need 3 total out of 5. But I think this RFP was crafted very broadly to kind of look at any potential ideas out there in a public-private partnership. And so it was really trying to get somebody who really did the reuse of these types of buildings and really put forward some creative ideas of what might be possible. Along with that, as was mentioned earlier, there's this new federal tax credit program, the opportunity zones. There's 3 in Salinas, there's 1 in King City, 1 in former Fort Ord. But that's regarding wealthy folks that have stocks, and if they invest such a part of those proceeds into this opportunity zone program, maybe that's a part of a funding package that might help get a public-private partnership off the ground. We don't know. So we have to exhaust all these potential opportunities. That's what we're going through. We're trying to see will this work. If not, at some point it'll come back to the board, and then if there is no private interest, we'll have to see is there interest in the board to try to use it for public purposes, or explore the other options that were presented in the past. We have new board members, so we have to see what they think on this. But part of doing this event tonight is trying to raise that awareness among board members and showing them that there is community interest, and that hopefully every person in this room will commit to be a champion and an advocate, because if you are, that will help us educate the supervisor and hopefully have a majority of votes that will support one of the options of public-private partnership or the county committing to reuse this somehow. Go here and then back.
Yes, I'm a historic preservationist and archaeologist.
I've been at CSU Monterey Bay since 1995. I was involved in the adaptive reuse of that facility. I've seen great things come from that. But I also worked in the California missions for some 24 years now. I was involved at Mission San Juan Bautista for 18 years. Regardless of what people feel about those facilities, the reality is they're part of the cultural legacy of this region. My experience in looking through the archives, studying those buildings, is that not so many years ago, in 1950, there was a plan put together to demolish the old mission church at San Juan Bautista and build a metal structure. I don't know how many of you would be in favor of that, but the reality is that building has endured because the community mobilized and over the course of several years was able to raise $1.5 million to rebuild the side aisles. The building's still standing. More recently, I was involved with the California Missions Foundation. We were trying to raise $10 million for Mission San Miguel. We worked on that project for years. We ultimately recruited Steve Hurst of the Hurst Foundation to go to Washington to lobby for us. And that money got derailed, and we turned it into Save America's Treasures grants. But, I won't say who, but someone at the Diocese of Monterey advocated for the demolition of Old Mission San Miguel's church, the one with all those beautiful murals, because they thought it would just be a tedious expense. That same person came to me after we saved that building and said, this is the most miraculous project we could have ever undertaken. So when you think about buildings such as this, what we are looking at is a historical legacy, one anchored into the traditions and the roots of this community. And if we really care about this community, we need to go back to those roots.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Juan, Chaco, and Alisal.
Thank you. I did want to say that there was a 10-year span of the timelines that you saw there, or as to this project from the time that the lawsuit was filed to the time it became a landmark, and then soon after we did have a number of meetings with the county staff. I believe you might have been to a few of those, and a lot of notes were taken. A lot of people had commented on ideas and stuff like that, such as what we're having here today. So this has been going on for a while. There's a whole lot of discussion on it, and the discussion is all good, like we all know. But at the bottom line is, we got to hit the road and start doing this thing, like you guys did with the missions. Congratulations, great job. I do want to mention one individual that hasn't been mentioned here tonight, and that's Edith. Mr. Norris, you remember Edith last name?
Enid Sales.
Enid Sales, thank you. Enid Sales was one of the preservationists who helped notify us as a community about what might be going on. Sergio Sanchez and Lucas Sanchez, they're working with UFW, we're supporters, and they were all there to say, hey, look at what's going on. What? Community got aroused and went out there and reacted to the situation and defended that landmark. So, hooray to all those folks who did the right thing when the call was asked of the community, and they stood up. So now we need to do that. We need to do that in more of an organized effort. Right now we're like a slap in the face. And we could be united and have a real impact when we get together. So we can do this and adelante.
Thank you. Thank you. Chaco, and then Lauro, and then John.
Professor from Cardinal College, Cardinal Community College down the street, Marty Yager, who's the head of the theater and film media department, is leading the way for the Salinas Valley Arts and Innovation Hub. Really trying to localize, centralize space for artists to emerge out of our valley, out of the region, and is right now, collecting or trying to solicit more and more support. There was talk about using some of the space over here by the train station. That kind of went to the wayside. It's something to really consider, a partnership with the local educational facilities. We know that there would be so much, you get so much, just as in terms of what Philip was bringing up. It could really speak to our culture, our history, the legacy, and can actually even, with the support of Harnell College and our other educational facilities, and maybe even the California Endowment, to get behind. put something in for this RFP.
Thank you, John. Real good ideas. Go to Lauro and then John.
Yeah, well, people like Cesar Chavez born every, like, 200, 300 years. So for me, it's going to be very important to support this. Otherwise, let's demolish it. What is it going to be for? Because I think a man like that, to really impact the future generations, needs to be a place of honor. So I understand business, and we can put business around and a little corner of Cesar Chavez on this side, and I'm not in favor of that. So I think it's important. What is going to be the end of this? I mean, because it's he gave his life to honor not just farm workers community, and I think that's important. What is the object of this? What are we looking for? So I think that part is important. Otherwise, just so that part for me is important.
Thank you, Lauro. That's what we're exploring. Like what could that look like? And we're getting a lot of good ideas. You know, partnership with Harnell, California Endowment, with some corporate sponsorships, maybe some a budget ask next year from the state budget to get some help from the state. We got some millions of dollars for some local things that we're working on this year, but maybe next year the ask is see if the state, while there is a surplus, might be able to help give a little boost in the funding that could be part of a package. So these are all good ideas, and we're hearing them. It's getting me thinking creatively, but it's exactly at the end, what happens, I mean, that's something I hope that kind of gels over as we're going on this journey, what we end up doing with it. Hopefully it's something that we can all be very proud of. John, and then we'll go here.
I was never here when he was around, but the history that I've learned over the years just through association, personally, what are we standing in right now? The Union Hall. Why is the union not involved in getting the word out to those same people that Chavez made these changes for? And unions are everywhere. Let's go national. Let's get the unions that back this program up. Let's get it done. Okay? If it's going to be done by just standing there and have a little museum in it, fine, that's done. So people have a place they can go. The Vietnam Vet Memorial, and I'm doing a comparison. The comparison is when a soldier comes home with PTSD and other issues, he or she has a place to go. They go up there, they sit there, they look at that beautiful granite flag, they meditate. They think about those 78 that have passed. Those are partners to them in their brotherhood or sisterhood. The same thing should be with the unions and every single field worker that's anywhere in the United States, not just Salinas, California. But he started it here when he went to jail, to stand for what needed to be stood for. And that's the word we need to get back out there, and we need to get the unions totally involved. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, John. John is a local veteran, and he was the chair of the Vietnam Memorial Committee. He does the events there and put all that together. So he's worked on efforts that preserve and create special places here in Salinas. So thank you, John, for your leadership. Was there somebody else? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can
Yeah,
I say something?
okay, yes, of course.
Yes, actually, I worked the fields before child labor ever came around. I worked the fields since I was 7 years old. You know, so I know a lot about the history about labor movement because I was there. And you're right. I think the union should be involved, especially the United Farm Workers. They should be involved because that we're trying to get this for Chavez. Let's not forget that Cesar Chavez was actually trying to better the lives of the Preservatio movement, because there was Preservationists into the, I got to work with Preservationists. I think it was about 14 or 15 years, but I worked with the Preservationists. And I know that Chavez looked at how they were suffering, how they weren't getting paid, how there was no restroom where they could go, no water. You know, he looked at that and he found injustice. You know, and even before now all these kids nowadays, they don't know nothing about labor movement because they have not worked. It was over 19. I think I believe that it was over before 1960, because I remember I was 14 years old when I got my first paycheck, and I was working for a company that was not union. You know, even though I was there during the United Farm Worker Movement, and so was my sister-in-law that we just saw there. We were friends even before I got married to her brother. She was a delegate for the West Coast Company, and so was my ex-father-in-law. He was a delegate, and he was a delegate of Fresno, Delano. He took us everywhere to Sacramento. You know, and I knew what life was all about, and I knew what Charlie was trying to do for all the farm workers, because life was hard. There was no restroom, there was no water. If you forgot your toilet paper at the house, you know, Mom, I'm gonna go to the restroom. Where's the toilet paper? Oh, I forgot me, huh? You gotta go over there to the butchers. You know, there was no water, there was no 15 minutes breaks, there was no shares. You know, it was only 1/2 hour lunch. You know, and we were kids, and we used to work those cotton fields. I would carry my own cotton fields, you know, and I know what labor was all about, and I know what Child was trying to do, you know. And I believe that in this museum or this building that we're trying to get to memorize Chavez, all he did, all the hard work he did for all the farm workers of Salinas, of Watsonville, King City, because we are all agricultural here. So he did it for all. But he actually started with Preservationists. Preservationists should be included in this museum. All their history, what they suffered, all those that died in that railroad track where the train killed them. You know, how my father was a Preservationist too. So was my uncle, you know, and it all started with them, you know. And also I think that the museum should also include the Ohlone Indians, which are the Native Americans of this land. We could have 3 things in one museum: Ohlones, Preservationists, and Cesar Chavez. You know, there's no need to stop paperwork and buildings and rooms. We could have a museum full of the history of the Ohlone Indians, and we have the history of Preservationists, and we have the history of Chavez. You know, because we are here because those farm workers worked so hard. I really believe that I bought all the tractors for my company, you know, because I worked hard, and I did, you know, I did 118 crates a day of strawberry, you know, and that buys I'll give you a lot of money. So I always say, I bought them those tractors, I bought them the cars, you know, and my father taught me hard work. You know how come my father taught me hard work? He said, you know, Mija, I don't know how to read and write, I never went to school, but you know what, I don't want you suffering. You're gonna go to school, you're gonna make something. And he was right, I became a registered nurse. And right now I'm retired with good pension, good CalPERS. But I remember the field work I had to go through in the cold. My father would take us in the cold weather at 5 o'clock in the morning. So cold, I was freezing. I didn't want to get out of the truck. And my father had no mercy. He said, get her out of the car. She's going to start working and she's going to warm up. She's going to warm up, and he's right. You start working, you start warming up. And you're cold and your chills go away. You know, but that's not what my father was. But you know what? I'm glad that my father taught me hard work. Because you know what, in this life, in order for you to survive, you have to give a lot of yourself to a lot of people. You know, when Chavez really deserves to have something here in the Valley of Salinas. We don't have it in Watsonville, we don't have it in Gilroy, we don't have it in King City, we don't have it in any area yet. This is the agricultural land where he fought so hard for. So I really hope that in some way we can get the money going, even if it takes a non-profit organization or we form our own. You know, I think I was working with Juan Martinez here on the Aguilar Museum. It was a beautiful museum, except they were charging us too much for the building, over $3,000 just to keep a little museum in for him. I remember Juan, he tried so hard, I remember. You know, and I was sad that this didn't work, you know, because I said, now we have a chance and opportunity to have something. You know what, a lot of tourists, we have so much winery. A lot of tourists will be anxious to come over here and find out about the Preservation movement, about Chavez, about the Ohlone Indians. We can work with the Lonely Indians. They also have a board. And I'm sure that we work together, they'll be so glad we have this museum just to cover these areas in this. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Right now, right here in the Salinas Valley, teachers are getting together at Chavo's house. And we're organizing with the ethnic studies movement, which is happening here in California. And we already have ethnic studies here in Salinas Union High School District. And one of the things that this museum would do is it would bring history alive for our students. It not only incorporates the topics that were mentioned right now by our comrade here, our union sister, but it also mentions the Filipino Americans that you saw in the videos and their struggle and the unity. That could also be a section. It also invites the topic of environmental justice, and one of the things that a little while ago Lauro said that I actually had to type out, and I'm going to probably be quoting him now, but he said the jail represents the injustices of the time. And you know, Salinas, you know, right next down the street from here we have a supersized juvenile hall coming up, and up in San Francisco we have the closing of juvenile halls happening right now. And you know, our youth are experiencing a lot of injustices. But to be at a place where Cesar Chavez, in the midst of his struggle, our students can learn, you know, how to fight those type of injustices, and how, you know, many times, especially in a city like Salinas, there's a lot of criminalization of our youth happening. It's going to give our youth an opportunity to see and put themselves in that place. You know, I could just imagine the chills our youth are going to get when they look down that cell and just know the history of his struggle and how he was, you know, treated. You know, it is important for the county, the city of Salinas, the businesses to figure out a way where they're going to create this museum. Because I came here thinking I was going to share ideas of what could go in the museum and how maybe we as the Chito Salinas Valley educators, how we could develop like the curriculum that would go with that and the field trips that would bring in our youth to this museum. I mean, I was coming in here more thinking as an educator, how am I going to give input to what that's going to look like or how we could organize for that. But then when we started seeing the RFP, then I started thinking, oh, business, and okay, what's the act going to look like?
But we need with your piece too. I mean, that's all should be part of it.
And just let me know, FYI, this jail was opened right before the Great Lettuce Strike of 1934. So this you know, this was all, you know, this history runs deep, you know, and it was the Filipino labor struggle of the 30s where many of those activists, many of those that were participating were housed when that jail had just barely been recently opened.
And Salinas has one of the largest Filipino American communities here that I think a section within this museum would be also important for our Filipino American students. And then also to emphasize the importance of ethnic studies and the diversity of the struggle that brought together, you know, Cesar Chavez, but how united he was with so many different environmental justice issues, as well as the different African American struggles of the time, and Martin Luther King, and just the movements that were happening, and the different ways in which people could organize, and you know, following the teachings of Gandhi. You know, there's so many things that could come into this museum, and so thank you for the time, and hopefully things can get written down and we can brainstorm.
We do. This is one of many future meetings we're going to have on this, because it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
But we want to welcome all those ideas and everybody's talents and energy. That's why we're going to make this a very special place. Bill?
Okay. Just like Martin Luther King before him, Cesar Chavez gave his entire adult life to improve the lot of others for the farm workers in this Salinas Valley. Not too many people would risk their lives and go to prison, go to jail for a just cause like Martin Luther King and like Cesar Chavez did. And I believe the reason why there has never been a museum at the jail before this is because of the tremendous racism that we see even today in the Salinas Valley. The tremendous racism and classism that we have continued to see here. And if that hadn't been the case, that would have been a museum a long time ago. It needs to be one.
Thank you, Bill. We're going to wrap up here. I want to acknowledge former Salinas Council Member Sergio Sanchez is here, and also Dominic Dursa from Assembly Member Robert Rivas' office. Thank you for being here also, because we welcome your office's support in this effort. We passed out some raffle tickets. We have a few of these raffle items. Each of these folders, there's the commemorative pin when they did the Cesar Chavez stamp. But I have a few of these that actually have the release of the stamp and this U.S. Postal Service envelope. It has a history on the back, and then it has this beautiful landscape of the agricultural fields and the different farm workers. And I mean, these are the last. These are collectors out of that because they don't make these anymore. These were done, I believe, in 2003. And this stamp is one taken by a friend of mine. The U.S. Postal Service used one of his stamps. His name was Bob Fitch. He lived in Watsonville. He passed away a couple of years ago. But he was my campaign photographer. And he was a photographer for Dr. King and Rosa Parks and a lot of legendary figures. So this is his image used here. So anyways, thank you for coming tonight, everybody. Thank you, Carl Holm, and your team for all your work you've been doing on this. And thank all the unions, educators, community leaders, professors. Thank you for being here. We'll keep you posted. If you put your name on the email, any future events, we'll make sure to email you of any happenings around preserving the historic old jail in Salinas. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.